We are out at the JFK Symposium in 1994 at the Holiday Inn with many guest speakers that will hopefully be on this tape. Right now I'm talking with Ian Griggs, who is out here at the Holiday Inn with the JFK Resource Group, and I'll let him take it over from there. I'm David Knight, and this is a special interview with Ian Griggs.
I'm 55 years old. I've just retired from a 22-year police career in London, England. I've been interested in the JFK assassination, heavily involved, since 1966. When the event happened in 1963, I remember where I was, what I was doing, like everyone else. And in Great Britain, it had a tremendous impact on us all, probably a greater impact than an American could realise. We were shocked, we were frightened, we were worried, we were amazed that it could happen. But an hour later, they caught the guy who did it. Good, we were all very pleased, well done. 2 days later, the guy who did it got blown away by this strange Jack Ruby character. We were even more pleased. This is true vengeance. The guy has shot the president, and now he's got his medicine, he's got his comeuppance. Great. And this was the attitude throughout Britain, throughout the media, and that's how it stayed. The Warren Commission came out, confirmed what we all knew. Oswald did it alone. Jack Ruby blew him away. Great. Then the doubts started to come about, and as a Brit, I'm proud that some of the doubts originated from some British people like Bertrand Russell, Arnold Toynbee, and other intellectuals started to question what had happened. And in 1966, Mark Lane produced his book, Rush to Judgment. Now, he could not find a publisher in America that would touch it. And Rush to Judgment was published initially in London, and it caused a sensation in England, and obviously it caused a sensation in America. And I bought Rush to Judgment as a paperback, and I read it so often that it fell to pieces, and it amazed me. The content amazed me, and this is how the doubts began, and the doubts began to grow, and that's where I've been ever since. And I blame Mark Lane for costing me a lot of money and a lot of time researching this thing since 1966. But looking back on it and being serious, it's been worthwhile. I've met a lot of fellow researchers, I've met a lot of witnesses, I've met a lot of authors. I've been well received in the United States of America, for which I'm grateful. We now have a research group in Great Britain, which is over 100 strong. Young people, old people, male, female. A lot weren't born when it happened. A lot have only come into it since the JFK movie, the Oliver Stone movie. But in Great Britain, this thing is very much alive, it's being researched, and we're still very concerned, and we want to know what happened.
Okay, thank you very much. Ian, I do have a few questions for you that I will hope that maybe you can answer for me. One question that I have for you is there's the hype, the controversy out that arises with the JFK assassination, that it was one gunman. It was Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone nut assassin that pulled the trigger from the Texas School Depository building in Dallas, Texas, in '63 of November 22nd. And what the question I guess that I'm trying to get to, without drawing it out very far, is do you actually believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the gunman? Do you think he pulled the trigger? Do you think he assassinated President Kennedy?
My personal view, and this is a personal view, is that Lee Harvey Oswald did not fire a shot that day. We've all got different views on this. The FBI, in attempting to seal the case against Oswald, submitted him to a paraffin test. This proved that there were marks on his hands that showed he could possibly fired a revolver that day, but the marks on his cheeks proved negative, which absolutely proved beyond doubt that he had not fired a rifle. After the FBI got these results back, they then covered their tracks by saying, well, paraffin tests are not very accurate anyway. Now, if that was the case, why on earth did they make the test in the first place? That document, and I've got a copy of that document, which negates the paraffin test evidence, proves to me that he did not fire a rifle. I personally believe, and this was the belief also of Larry Howard, is that Oswald, at the time of the shooting, was exactly where he said he was, in the lunchroom. This obviously, if Oswald didn't do it, then the next question is who did do it. I personally, and once again it's a personal view, I have 3 shooters in the Dealey Plaza area. I have one behind the fence on the grassy knoll. I have one possibly in the area of Daltex building, and I have a third on the roof which adjoins the County Records building and the county jail. If you've been to Dealey Plaza, you know those 2 buildings, but the average person on the ground does not look up too high, but if you do, you'll see those 2 buildings are actually linked by a roof, which is very high. It's probably about 6 stories higher than the top of the Dallas, the school book depository. And I think there was a gunman up there in a very high vantage point. In 1975, a spent .30-06 cartridge was found on the roof of the County Records building by some guys putting in a central heating system. This round, or this cartridge, appeared to be a pre-1963 origin, and it had been on that roof for a long time. It was weathered and it had been affected by the rain. I personally think that was the cartridge that came from the gun of somebody firing from that adjoining roof, the roof that adjoined those 2 buildings. The Daltex one, I'm not too certain about. I think there was someone there, but maybe yes, maybe no. The grassy knoll, I think research carried out by many experts since 1963 virtually proves that there was somebody behind that fence and there was a shot fired, maybe 1 shot, maybe 2. I've always been intrigued by the 3 tramps, and I'm convinced that the tallest of those 3 tramps was Charles Lloyd Harrison. Now, if I'm correct, and that was him, the question to be asked is, what was he doing in Dallas that day? His job, what he did, he killed people. He was a hitman. And I think that he was one of the gunmen behind the picket fence. There may have been 2 there, but I put him behind the picket fence with a rifle in his hands, possibly firing the shot that blew President Kennedy's head off.
Okay. Earlier, before we were on tape, you were telling me the story about the 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher or Kano bullet that's around your neck right now. And as I look at it right now, as we're tape recording this, it still intrigues me as a story. Could you give me that story on tape?
Larry Howard was a very dear friend of mine. He was supportive of me. He treated me as much as an equal as he could. Although I'm a Brit, and this is an American affair, it's really a worldwide affair, but Larry treated me with great respect. And last year, in November 1993, when I was over in Dallas with a group of fellow Brits, I spent a lot of time with Larry, and Larry gave me a lot of his time, and I was very grateful. And he invited me to his home. We went for meals together. I met his family, and we had a very, very strong rapport. Towards the end of my stay in 93, when it got near the time to go home, he took me on one side and he showed me a bullet, a 6.5 Mannlicher Volcano bullet, and he explained the story of it to me. And the story was this. When Larry was the principal advisor on the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, one day Stone asked Larry to provide 4 used Mannlicher Volcano bullets. Larry took the 6.5 Mannlicher that he has, and he fired it 4 times into a bucket of water or a bag of sand or something to produce 4 genuine bullets. These he handed to Oliver Stone. They were used in the movie, or at least one of them was, or maybe more, during various takes. And for anybody who's seen the movie, they will recall a scene where a character who purports to be Jack Ruby is seen walking away from the camera in Parkland Hospital and dropping this bullet onto the stretcher. This subsequently became the magic bullet in the film. At the conclusion of filming, when the film was finished, these 4 bullets, one went to Kevin Costner, the star of the film, one was retained by Oliver Stone. Larry Howard used to wear one on the chain round his neck, and he gave me the 4th of those bullets. Larry has now departed this earth. I have that bullet on a chain round my neck. It was given to me by Larry in November last year, and on his death I put it on the chain, and it's never been off my neck since that day when I first heard of Larry's death, and as far as I'm concerned it never will. And that brings Larry close to me. We were close friends. I was proud to be his friend, I was shattered and devastated when I learned of his death, and that bullet means so much to me. That's it. That's the story of the bullet that I wear on my neck, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Okay. And I suppose we have one last question, kind of parse off into A and B, and one is if you could say anything to any of the government officials as far as goes with the records of the assassination, and to get those open so we can find out if there's actually anything in there that would mean anything to us now, what would you say to the government?
Well, there are two answers. One is the obvious one. Everybody is shouting, open the files. And the second one, in view of the files that have been opened, please, when you open the files, don't let's have the sanitized version. Let's have the true version. I've got a copy of the Lopez report. The majority of the Lopez report is the sort of paper that you hang up in a bathroom. It's been so heavily sanitized, it's nonsense and it's meaningless. And you'll get a sheet of paper that almost everything is taken out of it. So please, release the files, release them in their entirety, release them quickly.
Okay, and our final question that we have here is, as you've been out here at the assassination symposium for Larry Howard, the first annual student symposium, I would like to get your views on what we're doing out here, and number two, how do you like it, and how do you think this will prosper more or less to the individuals, to the students, to the next generation this is going to be passed on to, the fellow researchers?
Well, the obvious answer is I wouldn't have travelled 4,000 miles here if I didn't think it was worthwhile. I was proud to be invited. I was invited by Daryll Howard, Larry's widow, who, as I've already said, I know very well. I think it's a tremendous thing. At the moment, there are no premises in Dallas. The AIC is no more at present following Larry's death. So the thinking is, instead of the people coming to the centre is going to the people. And if we're going to do that, then the people to go to are the youth of the country. I consider myself second generation researcher. Perhaps the youth of the country now are going to be the third generation and the fourth generation. Let's hope the fourth generation researchers won't be needed. Perhaps the thing can be solved and opened up before they get to it. But at the moment we're aiming at the youth of the country. This is how it should be. I'm very, very proud to be here, and I'm proud to sit on panels alongside people like Marina Oswald Porter, Ed Hoffman, Jack White, Craig Roberts, people who know far more about this than I will ever do and are closer to it. But I think between us, we can perhaps urge local government, national government to do something. We've got to get the media on our side. So far we've had a mixed press, literally. We've been interviewed on television, we've been filmed, we've been interviewed by newspapers. Some of this coverage has been good and fair. Unfortunately, certain other press people or TV people have not given us a fair crack of the whip and have almost ridiculed us. But we must gain strength, and we're a strong organisation. We must spread our wings, and the youth of the country, I think, are behind us. Here in Kansas, we've had a very good reception. We're among people that we trust, that we like. I personally have made some very good friends here, friends that I hope friendships which will endure. I will certainly keep in contact with some of the people I've met. We'll exchange views. Will probably cost me a fortune in telephone calls, but so what? It doesn't matter. It's been a delight to be in Kansas. It's a delight to be here for the rest of the week, and who knows, hopefully I can come back again. David, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next guest we have out here at the symposium is Mr. Craig Roberts, the author of Kill Zone, a sniper's look at Dealey Plaza. We have a few questions for Craig, and we'll start those as soon as he gives us a brief introduction to who he is and what he got him interested in this. And I'll turn that over to Craig.
Well, I'm a 25-year police officer. I was a Marine Corps sniper in Vietnam. I've got a background in both law enforcement and in the military. I've served in several capacities on the police department, from the SWAT team to the bomb squad, and I now fly helicopters. At the same time, the last few years, I've been writing books because I intend to do that when I retire as my next occupation, and I've written several books. Kill Zone is one of the more recent of the books that I've written.
Okay. What actually motivated you to write the book Kill Zone?
In about 1987 or 88, I was at a law enforcement convention in Dallas, Texas, and I had a few hours to spare one afternoon, and took a rental car and drove around a little bit in the Dallas area and ended up in Dealey Plaza. I didn't have too much interest in the Kennedy assassination, other than this was a location that was known as the crime scene of the century, and as a police officer, of course, I had some interest in that. I walked around and looked the area over. Eventually ended up on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. I read all of the exhibits, which mainly say that Oswald, a lone nut with a gun, fired 3 shots from the east window of the 6th floor down onto the street where Kennedy was shot, and wasn't too concerned about it until I walked over to the window right next to the one he supposedly took the shots from. You couldn't go to the window that he took the shots from because it's glassed in now. I looked out the window down into the kill zone, and the first thing that happened was I felt like that I'd been hit with a brick. I knew from my past experience as a Marine Corps sniper in Vietnam with a body count that this could not have happened, mainly because I couldn't have duplicated the feats that supposedly had occurred there on the 22nd of November in 1963. And that was 3 shots of devastating accuracy from an ancient, very crude rifle in 5.6 seconds. Even with my modern equipment that I used in Vietnam, which is a Model 70 Winchester, I couldn't have accomplished exactly what had happened there. I also noted that it was the poorest angle and the poorest shot area. The trajectory was bad. The target was going away from you around a bend through trees, and that whoever had fired, if they had fired from that window at all, had neglected the 2 best angles for the kill zone, and that was the street that came straight toward you and the 120-degree turn just below the window where the vehicle was almost stopped at the time and had a clear, unobstructed view of the target. The second thought that hit me is that my government had lied to me, because in our history books and everybody had told us that Kennedy had been shot by Lee Harvey Oswald from that window. And Oswald was then killed by Jack Ruby, who died of cancer later, case closed. The problem I had with that, if that was the case, then how come we had over 1 million documents locked away in the archives until the year 2029 for reasons of national security? I then began an investigation that led me through several years of investigatory work on documents, witness testimony, interviewing people, quite a bit of research, and came to the conclusion, obviously, that Oswald didn't do it, and more than likely didn't have much to do with the situation at all, and that Kennedy was hit from 3 different directions. I watched the Zapruder film, and what I saw was someone that was shot from the right front by someone firing a frangible or exploding bullet that disintegrated upon contact with his skull from the right front. And the reason I knew this to be the case is because, having shot people in the head, I knew exactly what happened when someone was shot, which direction the head would go, and so on. And what I saw in the Zapruder film was someone shot from the right front with the head jerking to the left rear. I picked 3 locations in Dealey Plaza that I would place people if I was going to perform an ambush of that type. And one was on top of the Dallas County Records building, one was on the 2nd floor of the Daltex building, and of course one was on the grassy knoll. The main thing I would use the 6th floor for would be diversionary shots to draw the attention of witnesses to pin the blame on someone else, a patsy, so to speak, which obviously we found out to be Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, you mentioned your body count in the military. Just for the record, and you do seem to sound like you know what is going on. What was your body count? How impressive was it when you were in the military?
Well, over a year's period, of course. I had a body count of 18, 45 probables, which means we didn't go down and examine them, or we didn't have witnesses. There's different ways to, depending on what year you were in Vietnam, that you had what was known as a confirmed kill. I really never paid much attention to it. The only thing I was trying to do was fight a war, survive, and then get home. I was replaced, though, by a Marine named Carlos Hathcock in my area of operations. He came over right after I left and took over my area of operations, which was south and west of Da Nang. Carlos Hathcock ended up becoming the top-rated sniper of the Vietnam War, and in fact probably the top-rated American combat sniper in history, with 93 confirmed kills and over 350 actuals that were unconfirmed. I called Carlos and asked him if he had seen the Zapruder film and asked him if he knew anything about the Kennedy assassination. And he kind of chuckled and he said, yes, he had. And in fact, what they had done is they had tried to recreate the shots that Oswald supposedly did at Quantico, the Marine Corps base there. And neither he nor any of his instructors at the Marine Corps Sniper School could perform those same feats in that amount of time. The same way they're described in the Warren report. So I knew if I couldn't do it, and Carlos Hathcock couldn't do it, Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it.
Okay, when we were in the symposium, matter of fact, it's not on tape, but you did mention a story about a postcard that was sent to you at the police station about when your book Kill Zone came out. Could you give us that story one more time on the record?
My lieutenant called me up one afternoon, and he was a little bit nervous, and he said, I need to tell you about something. Something just happened. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, we just got the mail, and you got a postcard sent to you here at the police department, and I think I need to tell you about it, and you can come down and get it. And he described it, and what it was a postcard of Dealey Plaza, and it showed the Texas School Book Depository, and it showed 3 lines emanating from the 6th floor window down into the 3 points that Oswald supposedly shot. It talked about the sniper's nest. And on the back, it was addressed to me at the police department, and then it said, great book, probably too good, watch your back. So the funny thing about it was the only place you could buy that postcard is at Dealey Plaza. And the other thing was it was mailed to me postmarked from my hometown. So they were in town, whoever mailed it.
Okay, could you tell us what your hometown was?
Well, that was Tulsa.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, and last question we've got then is, considering this is our first symposium, what's your opinion on the event here in Olathe?
Well, I think it's great. The attendance, I'm sure, could have been a little bit better, but for a first time out, I think it was very professionally done. You had some really great speakers. The displays were outstanding. They moved an entire museum up here, and it pretty much lays out that there's no way the Warren Commission could be right, and it gives you all the evidence and the clues to kind of be your own investigator, and I think that's great. The people that hosted it did a magnificent job. Everything was well organized, and the people that did attend had an extremely interesting and enjoyable time.
Okay, and with that, we're going to close with Craig Roberts. We're talking with Jack White, a photo analyst of many things to do with Oswald. As a matter of fact, he dubbed it over as the Fair Play for Oswald Committee. First question, actually, before we get started with questions, could you tell us who you are, what your age is, and what, as a matter of fact, your ordeal with the Kennedy assassination?
Well, I'm Jack White. I've been studying the Kennedy assassination ever since the mid-60s. I'm 30 years. I was around 35 at the time, so you can figure about how old I am. My main area of expertise in the Kennedy assassination study is looking at all the photographs related to the assassination and trying to see things that the average person doesn't see, to see if there's any meaning that can be derived from the photographs.
Okay, first question that we have is, do you think Oswald killed Kennedy? That's a pretty big question, so if please take your time with that.
It requires a very short answer. Oswald did not kill anybody on November the 22nd.
Okay. In your opinion, okay. Would you talk about our listeners about your 2 videos that you have? One is called Fake, and the other is The Many Faces of Lee Harvey Oswald. Could you tell us a little bit about each one of those videos?
Well, both of these are a result of my study of the photographs of the case. The Fake video is a study of the backyard photographs. I first became interested in the backyard photographs when I read the Warren report, and Lee Harvey Oswald said, "That's a fake photo, and I can prove it." He said, "That's my face, but not my body." And of course, he got killed before he could prove it, so I took up to see if I could prove it, and I proved it about 40 different ways that the backyard photographs are fabricated. And the other video, The Many Faces of Lee Harvey Oswald, I've always thought that understanding who Oswald was is the key to the understanding of the Kennedy assassination. And I looked at all the various photos that are supposed to be the same person, Lee Harvey Oswald, and it's very apparent that there are at least 2 persons pictured as being Lee Harvey Oswald. So I've had a slideshow for many years about this, and then I later made it into a videotape also. My most recent project is to take 77 photos of Oswald and make them into a poster, and any reasonable person looking at the poster can see that more than one person is pictured as being Oswald.
As a matter of fact, I did buy that photo here at that poster here at the symposium. It's a very intriguing thing to look at and to find out how many different Oswald photos that are out there and how many people portray to be Oswald. Our next question we have is, what do you think about the symposium? I mean, what are your outlooks on coming to something like this and to pass out to try to get the truth out there, to also to reopen the Larry Howard's information center down in Dallas? What are your views on this?
Well, the JFK Assassination Information Center, before it closed, was a very important resource in Dallas for both the general public and researchers. It provided a focus for people to come to tell information that they knew, to obtain information, and so it was. I was quite sad when it had to shut down when Larry died. The symposium is a very valuable resource. Unfortunately, things like this are a mere drop in the bucket to trying to get everyone to understand. I mean, when the symposium is over, maybe we'll have reached 500 people, but when you reach only 500 people out of millions, it's not a very big effort, but this effort must be undertaken, and especially with young people, because a lot of us who've studied it for 30 years are about worn out on it, and we need some fresh researchers to take up the cause. Okay,
if you could say something, and this tape will get out to several researchers of the generation that you're in, and also the generation that I'm in. I'm, matter of fact, 20 years old, and it's the question I'm asking is, what would you say if you could say anything to the public, to younger researchers and researchers like yourself, and throughout those age gaps, what would you say to people like that about this information that's out there in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy?
The number one thing I tell people is don't trust anybody. Now that may sound kind of harsh, but we have discovered so many cases in studying the Kennedy assassination of fakery, fraud, fabrication, telling just one side of the story. You can't really trust the media, or you can't trust the government to tell you the truth about the assassination of John Kennedy. And one of the best quotes is, if you read one of the best books on the subject, Crossfire by Jim Marrs, his very first sentence in his book is, "Don't trust this book." And that pretty well sums it up. You can't trust what you've been told about the Kennedy assassination. You have to study it and decide for yourself.
Okay, Jack, one final note out there is that would you like to add anything onto this tape that would be any interest to anybody else, of maybe something I haven't asked as a question that you could add to this to make it more of a collective source?
Well, the main problem with the study of the Kennedy assassination is we just don't have enough people actively involved. Too many people want to deny or hide their heads in the sand. They want to deny that the government could have been involved in the murder of the president. And yet, when you study the facts, the truth seems to be that the assassination was what in a lot of countries would be called a coup d'etat. And in other words, the president was violently removed from office so that other people with a different agenda could take his place. And the main thing to get over to people is that something happened in 1963, which is still having a strong effect on people today, and people need to be more aware of this.
And with that, we're going to close the Jack White. Thank you. Okay, we're back now, and we're talking with the lovely and beautiful Beverly Oliver, the otherwise known as the Babushka Lady, and she has a book out right now called Nightmare in Dallas. And I'll just turn over to her for an introduction of who she is. It's an embarrassing question and one that shouldn't be asked, but how old she is, and also what she saw down there in Dallas, Texas, on that fateful day in November.
David. Well, it's not hard to figure out how old I am. If I tell people I was 17 at the time of the assassination, that makes me 48 years old. And I worked at the Colony Club, which is the club next door to Jack Ruby. I was very good friends with Jack Ruby. On November the 22nd, 1963, I was down at Dealey Plaza to take pictures of my president, and just like everybody else was down there to see him. I was excited. I loved, adored him, admired him, respected him, and saw him as the hope of the future for our nation, as well as me personally. Because, what happens to our nation affects us as individuals also. And when the president was killed that day, it not only affected our government, but whether you realize it or not, it has affected your life very drastically. Because what happened November the 22nd, 1963, is still affecting the governmental policies that are being set today. And I was down there with my new Yashica movie camera, and as the motorcycles started to turn left onto Elm Street, I started filming, and I heard a bang, bang, bang noise, but did not realize at the time that was shots. It never occurred to me that it was shots. It sounded like to me someone had allowed their kids to bring those little poppers that you throw against the sidewalk and they pop. And then just as the president passed me and got a little to my left, there was a big ba-boom sound, a definite different sound than the bang, bang. This was a boom sound. And when that happened, the president went violently against the back seat. It looked as though a whole bucket of blood was thrown out the back over the trunk of the car. It was a horrendous sight. And I was in shock. I just stood there frozen. I couldn't move. People say, "Why were you still standing up filming when everybody else hit the ground?" I said, I couldn't move. I was frozen. And I don't remember the last thing I remember for a few minutes is the Secret Service man getting into the car over the truck and Jackie helping him in. That's the last thing I remember for a few seconds, minutes, or while. I don't know what the time that was. But anyway, I eventually made my way across the street. I'm standing there waiting on someone to come talk to me, and I stand there camera in hand, and no one seemed to want to talk to me. And I was getting antsy, wanting to leave to go get to a radio to see what had happened to the president. And I looked up and I made eye contact with a policeman that I knew, and I knew that he recognized me, so I knew they knew where to find me if they wanted me. So I left and went to a radio in my car. And I didn't go to work that night. I didn't go to work Saturday night. I didn't go to work Sunday night, because what happened Sunday morning was almost as traumatic for me as seeing the president shot, because that morning my friend Jack Ruby went into the basement of the Dallas police station and blew Lee Harvey Oswald away, a man whom 2 to 3 weeks prior to that he had introduced to me as his friend Lee Oswald with the CIA. So I didn't go to work that night. The next night I finally went to work, and as I went to work there was 2 men on the landing of the staircase, and they identified themselves, or the one identified himself as an FBI agent, had proper identification, badge, the whole thing, asked for the film. I gave it to him. It had not been developed. He said they wanted to look at it for evidence and then get it back to me in a few days. And, of course, it's never been seen since. Basically, that's what I saw and what I know. People are always asking me what happened. I don't know. I don't know who killed the president. I wish I did. I know who didn't. It wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. If Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone nut assassin, then he had to be in 2 places at one time. For if indeed he was in the 6th floor of that book depository building, then he was behind the picket fence too, because the shot that killed the president came from behind that picket fence area. And I believe that Oswald was exactly who he said he was, a patsy. I prefer saying he was a golden calf led to the slaughter, led to the sacrifice. And that's what I believe.
Okay. I'm looking here at the cover, as a matter of fact, to our listeners, Nightmare in Dallas, which it looks like a great, intriguing book. I can't wait to start reading it myself. I've met Jean Hill back at a bookshop. She signed her book and gave it to me also. The one that I'm looking, the question I'm looking to ask is, you're pretty well as close as what she was to the president that day. And
She was a little closer.
okay, the question I'm asking is, did you have a pretty good shot of the grassy knoll area? And
Oh,
if you
yeah.
did you see a gunman?
No, I
On
did
that
not
day.
see a gunman. Now, I was aware shortly after the shots were fired. I was aware of smoke, but I could not get on a witness stand and swear that was gun smoke, because at the time I assumed that it was cars, starting up behind the picket fence. But then I have to ask myself, what were cars doing behind the picket fence? So I guess it probably really was gun smoke. I know there was a very acidic odor in the air. It was much like the same smell that was there when we did the movie JFK.
Okay, and you were I presume a very, very big help to Oliver Stone on the movie JFK, and I've seen it many times, and almost ruined a copy of it in my VCR one time watching that. Do you feel that Oliver Stone came to be the closest, or one of the closest videos out there on the market right now, with all the other videos that are out there, that comes to the closest to the assassination and also to Jim Garrison's case against Clay Shaw and whatnot that the movie puts out there? Do you think that's the closest that comes out?
Well, David, I can't really make a comment on that since I haven't seen any of them. The only ones that I've seen is the Man Who Killed Kennedy, and I haven't ever seen it really in its entirety because I was in that one. And then I went to the premiere of JFK. That's the only time I've seen it. It still hurts me to look at those. I can't. I just cannot do it. And but I know Oliver Stone is probably, he probably has more integrity than the rest of Hollywood put together. And I know at what depths and what lengths he went to check, verify, and recheck everything that he did in that movie, even to the point where you may or may not know that the license plates on the vehicles match the license plate in 1963. That is detail, David. Now, people say he took liberties in the movie. Let me tell you from my own personal knowledge about two liberties, quote, that he took in the movie. On my part, where I was introduced to Oswald in the club, and in the nightclub scene, he has me at the table, Lee Harvey Oswald at the table, Jack Ruby at the table, Jada at the table, and David Ferry. Okay. David Ferry was not at the table that night when I was introduced to Lee Harvey Oswald, but he was sitting over at the bar. Okay. That's the kind of liberty he took. He put him at the table so not to have to do another scene to show David Ferry was a friend of Jack Ruby's and Lee Harvey Oswald. Another liberty that he took was in the character Mr. X. The testimony that was given by Mr. X is a composite of three people's testimony. But in order not to have to film this person, this person, and this person, he compiled it into one testimony. But the truth, the fact, is still there. He did not change the fact of the testimony or the truth of the testimony.
Okay.
And about, the Garrison thing, I think he was very close to that. And I think what kept my own personal opinion as to why Garrison didn't get an indictment against Clay Shaw was because of the true address that was given to the jury. He actually tried to indict the whole government. You remember the speech at the end that Costner did. Well, a lot of that was the true information that came out, and he actually did, say about the government doing this and the government doing that, and this cover-up the government did. And people back then was not ready to hear that kind of a charge against our government. Of course, since Watergate happened, people are not so near as to say, well, that couldn't happen. But had he been more specific, instead of saying the government this, the government that, if he had been specific enough to say rogue elements within this branch of the government, rogue elements, outlaws within this branch of the government did such and such and so, instead of indicting the whole government, I think he would have won the trial. I think he would have won a conviction.
Okay. I've seen a picture of you and Kevin Costner together. And as we were walking down here, you told me that you had met Jim Garrison. And I'm wondering, that how close did Kevin Costner play to be a true Jim Garrison? How close did he come?
Well, since I'm not that familiar with I haven't read the book Travel Assassin. So since I'm not familiar with the story of all of Jim Garrison's work in the trial, I can't really evaluate. But I think Kevin Costner hung the moon.
Okay. One question to get that I've asked a lot of people is so far this is your first day at the symposium. You got here last night. What as a matter of fact is your view and outlook on what we're doing here at the Holiday Inn here in Olathe, Kansas?
David, I think it's wonderful because if this tragedy is to ever be solved, and I'm not a cynic that says it can't be solved. I think the information is out there. I think it is solvable. I think time definitely may be running out, but it is solvable. How are we going to solve it? That's the question. How are we going to solve it? We're going to educate the people of this nation. We're going to educate young people like yourselves and these other great young people that are here at the symposium this week to the fact that regardless of whether there was a conspiracy or not a conspiracy, whether there was a cover-up or not a cover-up, there are files that have been locked up till the year 2039. Those files did not belong to Earl Warren to lock up till the year 2039. They belong to you. They belong to me. Nobody has a right to steal my property and hide it from me, which is what they've done. If there's not a conspiracy, if there's not a cover-up, then bring all the files. If I'm wrong about Oswald being shot, about Kennedy being shot from the front instead of the back of his head, if I'm wrong, show me the proof. Bring me the files. Show me I'm wrong. I'm still open. But all I have to go on, David, is what I saw with my own eyes that day. That's all I can go on until they bring me proof and show me otherwise. And I'm not so dogmatic as to say, if they show me, evidence of the contrary, that I won't say, well, I was wrong. I'm human. I can make mistakes. But I believe from the bottom of my heart, what I told you I saw down there that day, I saw. And I believe that's what happened. We need the people, mainstream America, people like you, people like me, to stand up and demand that the truth be known.
Okay. One last note that we might like to go on is to the researchers and to the younger generation, the next generation that this torch will be passed to until we can find out the truth. And most of those people will be able to hear this tape. What could you say to them, to the general public, to the younger generation, to start researching for the truth? What type of inspiration could you tell them to give them?
Well, I would say, first of all, to always seek the truth. There are two statements that I like to make about the truth. One of them comes from somebody far greater than me, you, or anybody else involved in this, and it says, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." The other great statement that I make came from my husband before I ever married him. First time I ever heard him preach, he made a statement that really seared into my heart. He said, "A half-truth is worse than a whole lie, for it's far more deceptive." And I would say to the generation about to receive the torch, never settle for a half-truth. Go for it all. Go for the touchdown.
Okay, and with that, is there anything else that you would like to add on to this?
No,
Okay.
I enjoyed meeting you. It's been fun. You young people are just a real inspiration.
Okay, and with that, this has been Beverly Oliver, the writer of Nightmare in Dallas with Coke Buchanan. Thank you very much now.
Thanks, David.
Bye-bye. We're sitting out here at the Holiday Inn here in Olathe at the JFK Student Symposium on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And I'm sitting here getting ready to talk to Devon Hazel. As a matter of fact, I've worked with Devon for about the last couple of years on this assassination. So with that, without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Devon and let him give us an introduction and his information.
Yeah, my name is Devon Hazel. I'm 22 years old, and currently I've been doing research for the past 7 years. I'd say how I got interested in it was through Mr. Quinlan. And my sophomore year in high school, my sister was a junior, and she was doing a lot of research. She had him as a teacher, and I got to see one of his presentations that really impressed me. Ever since then, I've been reading books, watching videos and giving presentations, along with discussing it with different people that had something to do with the assassination and people that have been researching it for a long time. Both people from down in Dallas and people from Kansas City. Today is October 21st, 1994, so I started about 1987.
Okay, and can you give me a possible? There's quite a few theories out there. Could you give me a possible theory of yours on this assassination?
Well, I would say that probably military intelligence had a lot to do with it, since they control the autopsy, and the autopsy is what the government tried to use to prove that Lee Oswald or another guy who fired all the shots from behind, a single assassin, fired at the president.
Okay, Devon, can you answer a question for me? It's a pretty tough one that I think it needs to be answered, and as many views as I can get on this as much as possible. The question is do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin, pulled the trigger and fired the shots that killed President Kennedy? The one shot in particular is the magic bullet.
No, I do not. From all the research I have done, nobody's been able to put Lee Oswald with a rifle that day, let alone on the 6th floor with a rifle. Yes, he was on the 6th floor earlier that day, but he was doing work up there. Around 12:15, a bystander by the name of Arnold Rowland saw a man up on the 6th floor with a rifle. However, Carolyn Arnold, who was on the 2nd floor in the lunchroom, says she saw Lee Oswald eating dinner or eating lunch at that time. So we have one man on the outside who saw a man with a rifle upstairs, and Carolyn Arnold, who saw the guy that the government says was on the 6th floor doing all the shooting on the 2nd floor at the same time eating. So no, I do not think he had. I don't think he had anything to do with it. I think he was set up from the get-go. I'm not sure when that officially started, but no, I do not think he had anything to do with the assassination.
Okay, and our final question is, what do you think about the symposium that we're putting out here in Olathe at the Holiday Inn on trying to reopen the information center and down in Dallas, and also to get the information out there to the general public? What are your views and aspects on this?
I think the symposium's done a lot of good for the Kansas City area. Unfortunately, since it was the first year, there wasn't a lot of publicity, so we're hoping that in years to come, more people will be able to come and learn from people who were eyewitnesses to the assassination or people who have been researching it for a great deal of time. They've been doing this down in Dallas for several years. I say this, the symposium, and they have a lot better turnouts down there. However, they have a lot bigger mailing list than what we have around here. Plus, they have the publicity of people that came down to the assassination center. Since it's closed down, it has hurt, and that's why we are doing the symposium. So I do hope that we can reopen the assassination center down in Dallas. Okay, and with that being the last question, would you care to add anything to the listeners that are out there that might shine some light on their research? I would say to try to read as many books as you can and stay away from a lot of what the media has to say. Much of the media has been biased on this because they are owned by the government, in my opinion. So if you can do a lot of reading, watching videos, and listening to people who have been studying this for a long time, I think you'll really benefit from that. Okay, and with that, this has been Devon Hazel, and I thank you very much, Devon. Thank you. This is a special update. We are back with Ian Griggs, and he was talking to me as the Assassination Information Center Symposium here in the Olathe Holiday Inn has been progressing for the last few days. And he's come up with some updated stories that he wants to talk about Larry Howard, who, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't really be putting on the symposium. So I'm going to open up the mic and turn it over to Ian and let him go with the stories that he has, so we can try to get the information out about Larry Howard, the finder and founder of the Information Center down in Dallas, Texas. So I'll let Ian have that, and this is Ian Griggs.
Thank you very much, David. This is just a little bit of light relief. This is a serious subject, and we're here to honour a serious, a humorous or frivolous side to our nature. Just one or two stories about Larry that I enjoy. I first got to know Larry Howard in 1992, and we struck it off straight away. We were good friends, and he was very helpful to me, and he respected the, I suppose, sensible questions I was asking him. Anyway, last year, 1993, I came back to Dallas, mainly for the symposium. And I arrived 10 days before the symposium started. And at this time, Larry and his wife Daryll and the crew from the AIC were in the process of moving the premises from the old marketplace into new premises at the Katie building. Larry, who was in the construction business before he sold his business to start the centre, was doing carpentry, and he was banging nails in walls and doing all sorts of jobs to do with the move. And I wanted to help him, and I said, "Hey, Larry, is there anything I can do to help?" And this particular morning, the mail had just come in, and he said to me, there, the mail's just coming. Go and open the mail and see if there's anything important. And I went over this big pile of mail, it had an elastic band around it, and I took the elastic band off of it. And the very first letter was from me. It was a letter that I'd sent from England about a week beforehand. So the very first letter that I opened with a view to answering was my own. And when I told Larry, Larry just creased up. Larry had a wonderful laugh, and this just amused him. It amused me as well. And during that period, I was carrying timber, I was banging nails in walls, I was answering the telephone, and it was an absolute delight to do that for Larry. I had a special nickname for Larry. I used to call him the man with the can, because 23 hours out of every 24, Larry seemed to have a can of Sprite in his hand. I don't know why it was. I never saw him with a Coke or a Dr. Pepper. It was always Sprite. But it seemed wherever Larry went, even when he was driving his car, he seemed to have a can of Sprite in his hand. A story that it's got a bit of a Sprite connection. Larry said to me one day, "Have you ever been up on the roof of the records building?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Would you like to have a look up there?" Now, knowing that there's a possibility there was a shooter up there on 22nd of November 63, I naturally said, "Yes, I'd like to have a look." So Larry, with a can of Sprite clutched in his hand, we walked out down to the main entrance of the records building. I expected, we'll go in here and go up in the lift or something. We walked past that and we went in some back door, back entrance, and Larry literally smuggled us both in. I know we were trespassing, we weren't supposed to be in there. And we were down dark passages and up little flights of steps. And eventually we hit the sunlight, and we went up a very steep ladder, and we were on the roof of the records building. And all the time Larry had this can of Sprite in his hand. And Larry explained to me that the last person he'd taken up there had been Oliver Stone. And this was another little story that I'd just like to relate, because it shows the respect that Larry and I had for me. And it meant a lot to me that the fact that it didn't show everybody up there. It was only special people. And I like to think that I was a very special friend of Larry's. And while we were up there on the roof, I took some nice photographs of Larry. And one of those photographs, I've had it framed. I've got it hanging on the wall at home, and that is my memorial picture of Larry Howard as I knew him. The last story I relate in this session, I may think of some more later on in the week. Let's hope so. But the last one is probably the best one of all. I was in Larry Howard's office one afternoon, shortly before the big symposium last year, and 4 men entered the room, and it turned out 3 of them were Brazilians, and the other one was an American, and he was an interpreter for them. They were a Brazilian TV film crew, and they claimed that they had permission to go and film in the 6th floor. Now I knew this was very, very unusual, because I'd never been able to smuggle a camera in there. But they convinced Larry that this was all okay. Larry made a couple of phone calls, and they said they wanted to take the Mannlicher Carcano that Larry had in the museum. They wanted to take that weapon into the building. Larry at this time was very busy with something else. I believe he was awaiting the arrival of another film crew. And he said to me, "Ian, you know this rifle, you know how it works. Will you take these guys and do whatever you can for them, but don't let that rifle out of your sight." So we went downstairs, and I felt a bit uneasy about walking through the streets of Dallas with a Mannlicher under my arm. So we managed to find some curtain, a blue curtain, and I wrapped this rifle in this blue curtain. Not curtain rods, curtain. So I walked down the road with these 4 guys, and I was chatting to the American, and the other 3 were listening and not understanding a word. And we got to the old Texas School Book Depository building, and I took the lead. I went marching up the steps with this gun under my arm, wrapped in the curtain. And we got in there, and the security guy took one look at me and said, "What have you got there?" And what had happened, and I didn't realise it. the butt of the gun was now sticking out the back of a curtain, and it was obvious what I'd got there. And I said to the guy, I'm afraid it's exactly what you think it is. And he turned me around and pointed me to the door and said, get out. Didn't you read the notice? And as I was thrown out, I noticed that on the door there's a big sheet of paper, and it said, no weapons or explosives allowed in the building. Now, I turned around and said to the American in charge of the Brazilian TV film party, I'll go across the road to the coffee shop and I'll see you guys when you've worked out exactly what we want to do. Now, anybody who knows anything about the assassination and has been to Dallas in recent years knows that the coffee shop is situated on the ground floor. That's the first floor of what used to be the Daltex building. So, having been kicked out of the Texas School Book Depository with my Mannlicher, I then walked into the Daltex with my Mannlicher. And I sat down and I had a cup of coffee, and nobody threw me out of there. They were quite amused when I told them what had happened across the road. I don't know if anybody else has ever done that. Perhaps Gary Oldman when he was playing Oswald. And eventually, after 10 minutes or so, the Brazilian film crew and their interpreter came back looking rather unhappy. Nobody had given them permission to film on the 6th floor. They'd also been kicked out. They come a long way, all the way from Brazil, to doing this newscast. So we ended up filming on the corner of Houston and Elm. I kept a very close eye on the Mannlicher. I showed the guy how to work the bolt and work the trigger. And he tried to, as we all do, he tried to fire 3 shots in 5.6 seconds. And he had great difficulty in firing one. He kept forgetting his lines. Obviously, he's speaking in Portuguese. He kept forgetting his lines, and he had his script on the floor under his foot. And it was just so funny to see this guy in a long raincoat on a summer's day in Dallas with his script under his foot trying to work this Mannlicher being filmed. It's just another Larry story that I love. I can't think of any more at the moment, David. If I do think of any more during the week, I promise I'll get hold of you. And if you want to tape some more silly Larry stories, then I'm your man. But it's a pleasure to talk to you. I like what you're doing.
Well, and I sure do appreciate the story, so we can keep the dream of opening the information center and the dream of Larry Howard, keep that alive.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, now, Ian. We are now with special guest Brian Edwards, who is a Lawrence police officer and is also a Tippit murder scene expert. And with that, I'm just going to go and turn it over to Brian and let him give a introduction of who he is and his kind of verbal resume to us, and kind of let him go with that. And this is Brian Edwards.
Thanks, David. For the last 16 years, I've been studying the assassination. I got started in it just reading about it since when I was in 9th grade. I had to do a term paper, and of course, being the average male, I had to. I decided to pick something that interests me because of the sensationalism of it, and I picked up a book called Rush to Judgment. At that time, I thought it was a murder mystery, and I started flipping through the first 2 or 3 pages and realized it was about the assassination of the president. So that intrigued me enough that I kept reading, and the first chapter was done. When I read the first chapter, I went to the local library and picked up copies of the Warren Report and took one home and found out there were discrepancies in it. That's what got me interested in the assassination. For the last 15 years, I've been a police officer in Lawrence. My area that I really like to concentrate on is the relationship of the homicide, which is basically what it is, or the homicides, in relation to the physical evidence, what would have been needed to go to court on a case like this. Basically, had these things been done today, in our time, 1994, most criminal court cases like this would have been thrown out because of lack of evidence. So it really piqued my interest as an investigator more than a researcher. So I guess that's what keeps me going, is trying to unravel the pieces of the physical evidence aspect of it. As far as the Tippit murder scene goes, since I am a police officer, I feel that it's more or as important to find the killer of a fellow police officer as it is to find the killer of the president. Again, it all hangs back to the fact that the physical evidence doesn't match the scenario and the pre-drawn conclusions based on what they found. So I guess to answer your basic question, what got me interested in it would have been to try to solve a murder, basically.
Okay, and well, that pretty well answers my first question about to elaborate on the murder Tippett scene. My second question to you is, can you give me a possible theory of yours on the assassination as a fellow researcher, as either President Kennedy and also J.D. Tippett? As the question arises is, do you think that Oswald killed President Kennedy, and do you think Oswald shot J.D. Tippett? That's a main question that's out there right now. So please take your time and give me a good answer to that.
Okay. We'll start with the president's murder. Just anybody that has two sets of a set of eyes, two good eyes, can see it from this Zapruder film if you watch it. Then obviously somebody was shooting from the front. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. That's probably the reason it was locked away for so many years. The theories, as far as my theory on it, is, of course, this is just speculation, of course. It was, to me, very obvious to be a firing squad, triangulation of fire. Somebody had to have given the orders. Somebody had to pull the triggers. There had to be an escape route possible. Military people are trained like that. They can follow orders without question, be told what to do, where to be, and not to say anything if they're ever caught, deny everything. So I guess to answer that part of the question, I would say that according to the photographic evidence, an FBI agent removes evidence from the scene. That whole crime scene was basically botched because it should have been secured and no one should have been allowed to leave without getting names, addresses, and phone numbers. So I think it was a military execution to show how much power the secret invisible government has over the people. As far as Tippett goes, I think he was a player. I'm not sure where he was a player. I delved into, we go off on a tangent about Tippett. I think to get on the trail of Oswald, I think there had to be a reason to get him out into the Oak Cliff area. And what better way to do that than have another police officer be killed? And they dropped the crime scene of the century in Dealey Plaza and rush full force out into Oak Cliff. And the evidence there again was followed the same scenario where it was picked up, mismarked or not marked, selectively decided what was going to be used. Witnesses were never asked what they saw. The ones that did it were asked gave incomplete statements or contradictory statements. And then all of a sudden you have a call of a guy that didn't pay a movie theater ticket in the middle of the afternoon when they have two crime scenes to work and they all rush away from that. I think somebody knew Oswald was going to be there. I think it was compromised by people in Sheriff's Department, Dallas County Sheriff's Department, Dallas Police. If you can control the evidence that's presented, you can control the investigation. So I think it was a whole conglomeration, a whole mixing pool. And then you have the final nail in the coffin is Ruby. Ruby kills Oswald on live television. Ruby is obviously linked to, deeply connected to the mafia. So you've got a lot of theories that are possible, but you've got to have people that play the parts. And I think you had them all together in one place at one time, and they basically followed orders.
Okay, and our next question we have there is: do you believe what we were told about the assassination to be true? To be the truth is what we've got, and as far as what the Warren Commission put out, and to what our government has been telling us ever since November 22nd of '63.
Well, this could probably be the longest question on the longest answer that you've got, but absolutely not. What the government told us and filled 26 volumes up in the local libraries that are basically a hamburger and a piece of some cornflakes. That's all it is. It's just fluff. It's filler. It's to confuse people. If they really wanted people to read it, they would have had an index to it. They didn't want anybody to read it. I read it. I've read it all. I've read the exhibits. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you have information in there that had no bearing whatsoever on the assassination of President Kennedy and the murder of Officer Tippit and the murder of Oswald? I think they made so much, they put so much information in it, they knew anybody wouldn't read it. So I think there was a purpose behind that. If it was true, why did they lock the files away for 75 years? Somebody's hiding something. It doesn't make any sense. Why are they continuing to stonewall and stand in the way of people trying to seek what the real truth is? I think if they knew that we had the truth, that they would be afraid that there would be an overthrow. I think I'm not advocating the overthrow of the government, of course not. I love this country. I'll stand for right and wrong, but I think this is one of the wrongs that we ought to question. I'm going to continue to question. I'm going to stay healthy until 2037, where I can go up to the archives and see what the files say. But I would suspect there's not going to be anything in there, and I don't expect to find names, places, dates, rifles, and positions. That's never going to happen. There's nothing on paper, but somebody knows something, and they're not telling us, and it's in their best interest that they don't tell us. But I'm glad to see young people still trying to find the truth. I hope we find it someday. And to put it in a more recent perspective, some people ask, well, why are you doing this? And I say, well, it may be too late for justice, but it's never too late for the truth. I mean, that's all I'm looking for is the truth. If you can tell me the truth, I can handle it. Just tell it to me, and I'll go quietly and perform my duties like a good citizen.
Okay, and our final question that we have is, what do you think about the first annual Larry Howard Student Symposium that we're having here at the Holiday Inn? And to the listeners that's listening to this, yes, it's a question I've been asking, and everybody's answered it. And I feel that to the people that listens to this and the people that are going to research it, I think that it deals with the idea that this is their opinion, this is why they're doing it, this is what is to come out of this symposium. This is the whole idea, what's behind it, and for you as researchers to go out and find it. So I hope that Brian can give us his opinion on this.
The main motivation that Casey and Mark and I put the idea together to Daryll Howard was that we wanted to show her that Larry's dream isn't going to die just because he passed away. It's important that the young people continue the fight to seek the truth. That and the fact that it really makes me feel proud that we've done a good enough job in local areas that kids are stimulated. Kids, I say kids, I mean young people are stimulated and want to know more answers about what their government's telling them. In 1964, people didn't question what they were told. That's pre-Watergate, pre-Iran-Contra, pre-Vietnam War. People wanted to know that the people at that time believed our government would never lie to us. Then they filled up 26 volumes of nonsense. People begin to question. And I think that was the stumbling block of the government's cloak of secrecy. So it really motivates us to do better at the symposium to show that it's obvious that people come out because they do care and they want to know the truth and they want to know what's going on in our government. And if we're successful in presenting that to people, then we're going to continue to have these until we grow so big that we have to move out of state or move to a bigger hotel or something. But it really makes me feel good that there's young people that are standing in line to get into this thing. They want to know what's going on inside our government. And I think we've been successful at that. I hope we have. And that was our goal. Plus to educate and stimulate minds, not just read what's in the history book, because what's in the history book is to be taught in a semester, and you don't get all the information that you should. So hopefully people will go away. If one person goes away from the symposium this week and starts to question and starts to do a little research, then we've done our job. And that's what we're trying to do, and then rebuild the museum. And if we can, 10 years from now, the museum's still running, I can look back and say I had a part of that, and I contributed to that success. Then I'll be happy.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to more or less open up the mic to Brian and let him add anything that he would like to. that comes to the top of his head, because this is not a preparation that's been taken to ask these questions. So I'll just open up the mic and let him say whatever he wishes to say to be a closer.
David, I think what I usually like to end my lectures with is we don't profess to know all the answers here. Casey, Mark, and I probably have 45, 50 years worth of experience in research and study. We don't know all the answers. I would like to know all the answers, but what we want to do is give other people who know nothing about it a chance to find out more about what happened on November 22nd, 1963. Do your own research. I don't profess to tell people, and you know, you're the first person that's ever asked me, what do I think happened? I usually don't tell people that. I mean, it doesn't matter what I think. It's important what other people want to believe or what they find in their own research. So you got a scoop, basically. I think it's important that everybody comes to their own conclusions. And don't rely on what I told you, and don't rely on what other people tell you. I mean, seek out the truth yourself. But it's out there. It's just we're having a hard time getting to it. Hopefully someday we'll be able to get to it.
Okay, and with this interview, this has been Brian Edwards, a Lawrence police officer's look at the assassination and the information that's out there. Thank you very much now.
Thanks, David.
We are now sitting here with Daryll Howard, the widow of Larry Howard, who passed away on January the 8th of 1994. Larry was the founder of the information center that was down at the West End Marketplace in Dallas, Texas. And with that, I'll turn over to Daryll and let her give a little bit of information to herself and to her late husband, Larry.
Okay, what do you want to know?
I guess go ahead and tell us.
Okay. Well, I'm Daryll Howard. I'm 52 years old. I met Larry in late 1962 or 1963. He was a home builder, and my family moved back to Texas from California. We lived in Texas before that, and Larry built our house when we moved back. And a few years later, we needed another house, and he built us another house. And that was about 22 years ago. And that's when he and I decided that Larry was my very best friend. It just so happened that we also loved each other, but it's real nice when you can love your best friend, because on a everyday basis, he and I just like to do the same things. We thought the same things. Our taste was very similar, so building houses was a lot of fun. And then we got interested in the Kennedy assassination, and we both enjoyed looking for information. So we did everything together. So I think I'm one of the few wives that enjoyed and participated in what their husband was doing. And very few of the other researchers, their wives, are usually very mad at them for spending all their time, looking at Kennedy information. And all the other guys would say, "How come your wife let you do this?" And he said, "Because she's just as interested as I am." So that's kind of how we spend our time.
Question that I have is, when I had heard that the information center had closed down in Dallas, I kind of had a real sad moment about that, because it was a place when I went down there in '91 and spent quite a while. When I went down, a lot of the kids, they went over, throughout the mall and all, and I went and mostly just spent most of my time in the information center talking with people and looking at all the stuff that was in there, all the research materials and so on. And it was a pretty sad moment. And now to see it out on the road, so to speak, and down here at the symposium in Olathe, I understand that the symposium or that the information center is going to be reopened in Dallas. Could you give us a little bit of information about where it's going to be open at and maybe when it will be open?
The man who owns the Texas Theater wants to restore it, and he wants to take advantage of its historical background by making it, turning it into a tourist, I won't say attraction, but take advantage of the tourists that do want to see it for its connection in history to that's where Lee Harvey Oswald was captured. It's in a very bad part of town. That part of town is going down very quickly. I mean, you can drive down the streets and you can see it changing daily. He is trying to get the city to help him so he can get some sponsors to try to turn that area of town around. It may be too late, but he's spending a lot of money. He's having all the seats redone in the theater. He's been cleaning for about 4 months now. The theater was built by Howard Hughes in 1931. It has quite a history, and if he could ever get it restored to the 1931 condition, it would really be a show place. And but it would take probably $1.5 million and probably at least 5 years to do it. But I think that's his goal. Whether he'll ever reach that goal or not, I don't know. But he felt like I might find a place, a home there, because I could take a small part of the space, and for the people who came in to see the Kennedy connection to the theater, I could supply that. And then he wants to use the theater as a multicultural theater, so all the people can use it for live entertainment or whatever they need in that area of the city. And it's big enough to accommodate us both. So I talked to him right before I came up here, and I told him as soon as I got back I would talk to him again. Our problem is we don't have much operating capital, so just financially it's not going to be easy. But there again, we haven't had much time to try to do anything about that. But now that we have a direction, at least we know what we need. So we'll try it and see what happens.
All right. If there was one thing that you could talk to the younger generation, the generation that the researching is going to be passed on to, the next generation, could you say something to them that would get them to get interested in something like this, to start researching, to start seeking and searching for the truth? Could you give us something like that the younger generation could listen to and try to live by, more or less, so this way they can try to research for themselves also and seek for the truth?
The assassination is interesting just because it's a mystery that you don't have answers to. It's just like a Dick Tracy or Sherlock Holmes mystery on one level. But on another level, it shows you the contempt that the government has for its own people. And that's the scary part. Because once you look at the information, and a third grader can look at what's out there and come to a very simple conclusion that we were lied to, and then you say to yourself, I did anyway, that I didn't know the government lied to people. I thought there were mostly good people in this world and a few bad people. But now I think there are a few good people and mostly bad people. And when I discovered that my government was lying to me, and I'm an American citizen, I was extremely upset. And the Kennedy assassination just gets your attention. And then after you can see the lies, then when you look at the news at night, it's easier to see the lies. And right now, the American way of life is in big, big trouble. The jobs are gone, and they're going. You know, what's not gone is going. There's homeless people on the streets. I never ever thought I'd see a homeless person in America. And people look at them and they don't even feel bad about it anymore. It's like, what's wrong with those people that they're homeless? You know, there's just something drastically wrong. The drugs all in the country, the government could stop that tomorrow if they wanted to. They're making money off of it. And it's sick. Kennedy's assassination just gets your attention.
Our next question we have is, with the symposium that's going on right now here at the Holiday Inn, I know to the listeners that are listening to this tape, it's a question I've almost asked every one of the individuals on this tape. What do you think about the symposium that we're having right now to try to reopen up the information center? What are your views on the symposium that we're having that we've had so far, and what's to come until Saturday?
The symposium is, I think the information is good. The way it's being presented is good. The people who are receiving the information seem to be satisfied with it. And if that is for one person, that's fine with me. And it's for a lot of people, that's fine with me. I've never been interested in numbers. If somebody sincerely wants information and we can provide it and they are satisfied with it, then I'm happy. I know the people who are putting this on are very disappointed that they haven't gotten the cooperation of their own school system. And I was rather surprised that they were so surprised. But that's their the school system's problem. I mean, it's not. I'm just very surprised that they are not more open-minded. It's scary that they're not more open-minded. When I see this political correctness stuff, it reminds me of Nazi Germany and book burning. And I think that the American way of life is in big trouble when you can come to a rather small town like Olathe, Kansas, and run into this much political correctness garbage. It's scary.
Okay, and one last thing I'd like to ask is, would you care to add anything to this tape that I have not asked yet, or that might mean something to somebody that is listening and that is searching for the truth? Would you like to add anything to this?
The reason I'm doing this is because Larry, I didn't want to let the bad guys win. I did not want to let the people who forced the closing of the center think that because he died that the information will die. None of the research community is going to let it stop. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. They wanted me to do it. I wouldn't do this by myself. If I didn't have all these people help me, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. My family didn't want me to have anything to do with the subject anymore. So I'm kind of going against their wishes. I just didn't want the bad guys to win. They have the physical building we were in, but that's all they got. They don't have the research community or the friends or the volunteers, or they have nothing but an old building. So I'm winning, and Larry's winning. That's all I care about, because I don't like to lose. So I'm in Olathe, Kansas, because we're still winning.
And with that, this has been Daryll Howard, and I'm David Knight, and that will close this interview with Daryll Howard. Thank you very much.